We usually see a lot of musicians become actors, as you have, in your film, but not necessarily a lot of musicians becoming directors.
Oh.
So can you share how being a musician made you more in tune as a director? And we know that it's a musical, but outside of that.
Of course. Well, I always wanted to make films. For me, it was about what I had access to. Grew up in Ghana, and I didn't have access to much but a pencil and a pad. So I started as a visual artist, and I always drew, I always painted, because I had access to those. And then when I immigrated to the United States, I had more access to music, so then I did music. And then over time, I had access to when cameras became DSLRs, and you could actually, shoot, 4K. The tools were more accessible, and I started making film. But my goal was always to arrive at film. The beauty of cinema is that it is truly an amalgam of all the other creative mediums. So, you got to know how to write, you got to know how to shoot, photos or at least paint images, because you're going to need to do that in cinema. You got to understand music and how it functions. And so for me, it was a very, very advantageous thing that I'd engaged in all of these creative processes. I'd written a novel, so when I came in, I was really well versed in all the elements of how a movie should function. And I think that was deeply helpful.
Definitely. I know you have a limited series forthcoming.
Yes.
How has this film changed just how you're going to approach directing moving forward?
Well, I thought it was going to change a lot. It hasn't. The same way I made my $40,000 little indie in Ghana is the same way I had to make The Color Purple. Yes, it's a lot more people and a lot more money, but the ultimate thing still comes down to, do you have a story to tell? And do you know how to tell it? And how clearly can you communicate your ideas? So I go back to that kid who drew, and that's how I've always been able to get through everything. I had to draw over 600 frames for my first film. On this one, I had to draw close to 1,500 frames. And that ultimately helps me communicate my ideas in a very clear, succinct way. So I will say, moving on to, no matter the scale and size of the next movie, I find myself doing the same exact thing. And if it ain't broke, why fix?
And lastly, I know there's so many themes in this movie, from breaking generational curses and sisterhood and faith. What do you want audiences to take away from this? So we have to pick one or two things.
Well, I'll say radical forgiveness and accountability. Those are two things I think go together. I think that is what Alice Walker's brilliant text always kind of felt like to me, was what it looks like to free others and free yourself. And I think that those are key tenets that I hope that when people flock to the theaters on Christmas Day, rocking their purples, it will be a moment of true transcendence. They will find healing in themselves and healing in others. They'll learn to forgive themselves and forgive others. And I think that if the world needs more of anything, it's exactly that.
Oh, I love that. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So much. Appreciate it.